So, the Chiefs haters are getting their reward, booing of Taylor Swift, Kendrick Lamar burying Drake at the halftime show, and his ex crip walking during the performance. Anthony, this is truly the haters' Super Bowl, and I'm all here for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, see, just hater is my brand. Okay,
That's
I mean,
right.
ask any Michael Jordan fan the last 5 or 10 years what that's like.
Oh my God. Luckily, I don't think that'll come out of my mouth tonight. That's Anthony Strait. That's Jake Kaplan. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz. And before we just fake our street cred a little bit more, let's get to the NBA midseason report of On the Sports Lines. Hey now, it's the All Star break. We'll talk about the local teams, one that knows that all that glitters is gold, plus talking about three more trades that shows that only stars break the mold of the trade deadline. Smash that subscribe button to youtube.com/on the sports lines or mouth off to us in the comments section. But first, let's go back one more time to the NFL, talking about the most watched Super Bowl in history. And that's funny because I thought you all boycotted the Super Bowl because of Chiefs fatigue. How could it be? It was a blowout. How could it be the most watched Super Bowl in history? Hmm, interesting. Okay. They say you only talk about the things you love. Well, in this case, this is going to be a very short state. This is going to be a very short segment. In a game that was not like how we predicted, and don't worry, we have video of it to make fun of all of us. The Eagles dog walked the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22. And for the second time in the past 8 seasons, not only did the Eagles get a Lombardi trophy, but they became the Thanos to a three-peat. They did it in between the Patriots' time to do it. They just straight up did it to the Chiefs. And what did it cost you, Eagles? Only Kellen Moore this time, so not too bad. Now, with the hoopla down in NOLA done, Anthony, final thoughts on this kind of dud of a big game.
By the way, does anyone else notice how the talk of referees helping the Chiefs and games being rigged completely vanished by halftime?
I mean, it's going to happen when it's a blowout, and it's like, oh, they didn't actually pay them this time,
Wait,
so
wait, me, wait,
whatever.
we mean the refs aren't the ones trying to dropping passes over the middle, Travis Kelsey. But anyway,
Yeah, other
look,
happens.
yeah, they belong to the Eagles defense. And think back to Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator last year, basically ran out of Miami. But remember in that wild card game, how Kansas in the frigid cold, the the Miami Dolphins defense, at least for a good number of that game, really did a good job of slowing down the Chiefs' high-powered offense. And really, if the offense had did anything in that game, maybe Miami has a decent shot at pulling an upset. Fast forward to Sunday, and the the Eagles didn't bliss a single time on Patrick Mahomes' 42 dropbacks, and they still managed to pressure him on 45% of those plays. Banjo sent four players 39 times and just three guys um the rest of the way. And they still were able to rack up 6 sacks. The Chiefs were 3 for 12 on third down conversions throughout the game. Didn't even they were over the first 9 on third down. And it was just a cast of characters. Jalen Carter had a solid game. Josh Sweat, who you could have made the argument could have been an MVP of that game, walked away with 2.5 sacks. Milton Williams did damage. Dallas Hunt, Mora Ojomo, these guys just was living in the backfield all game long. Patrick Mahomes did not have time to do anything. By the way, by the way, Patrick Mahomes did not pick up a first down with his legs the entire game. You have to go all the way back to the 2018 AFC Championship game lost to New England. The last time Patrick Mahomes won an entire game without scrambling for a first down. Look, it was a complete demolition of the Chiefs offense, but a lot of Kansas City's shortcomings, of course, Jay, we can talk more about that, really was exploited. And it's something that I think you have to give a lot more credit to Patrick Mahomes than than we always do. When you realize so many of the offensive shortcomings were somewhat covered up by how good he really is at quarterback. Whether it was a bad offensive line that couldn't do anything, or a really second tier receiving core and an Asian Travis Kelsey to boot. But to fill up the Eagles, they set the stage literally from the first quarter, getting pressure immediately, getting it past Mahomes' face. The pick six was just a combination, just a great play of pressure and dropping and disguise and doing a good job of disguising coverages. It was the formula that the Giants used against the Patriots in Super Bowl 42. When you can get pressure with four guys or four linemen and just be able to drop everyone back and flood the passing lanes, that just creates a headache for even the best quarterback because he has nowhere to throw the ball to. And even though there was a couple of plays when they had to bring Travis Kelce in the chip block, but now you take away his safety valve. So just a masterful game plan by Vic Fangio. The Eagles defense showed why they were the number one defense all season long. And what happened on Sunday was just it was symbolic in so many ways. I mean, a team. We saw a team that pretty much was kind of overlooked, to say the least, because there was history staring in the face of the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles on a bigger stage. They did not shy away from it, but their defense really was the star of the show in this game, without question.
It's funny though, but by the way, Patrick Mahomes didn't rush for a first down. That's great. What was my angle last week? Patrick Mahomes rushing. So great job on that. But it's kind of funny how a 14-3 team. It's like we said it all last week. Kansas City doesn't lose. Philly has the better team. Philly had the better team, and Kansas City kind of fell apart in this one game. However, Jay, Kansas City's legacy still lives on, and the dynasty kind of still lives on, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, and the way I look at it, I mean, with as far as the Chiefs' performance in the Super Bowl went, lots of bad, some ugly, very little good.
Not a lot of good. Honestly, it's more bad when you think about it. A little window dressing at the end,
very little,
but it's not good.
Rabbi, I said to you on Sunday while we were watching the game that, especially, nothing the Chiefs offense ran in that first half looked anything like the plays I was used to seeing from Andy Reid's call sheet. The Eagles defense so utterly disrupted everything practically at the snap of the ball that Chiefs offense had no time for their plays to develop. Chiefs offense was so overwhelmed by Philly's D that Patrick Mahomes never got into any kind of a rhythm in the first half. He completed a 6 of 14. That's 42.9%, just 33 yards. That's just 2.4 yards per attempt. 2 picks, including the first playoff pick 6 of his career. Per Next Gen Stats, his completion percentage of 42.9 was lower than his under pressure rate, which was 47.1. And per True Media, Holmes' negative 1.45 EPA per dropback at halftime was the lowest ever by a quarterback in a Super Bowl since at least 2000. Mahomes has now underperformed in 4 of his 5 Super Bowls, topping his career average EPA of 0.21 just once. For his career, his Super Bowl EPA now sits at a pedestrian negative 0.01. Now, I know the guy taking the snaps wearing number 15 for the Chiefs had Mahomes on the back of his jersey, but that guy didn't even remotely resemble playoff Patton. Those 2 picks, which largely contributed to the Eagles' 24-0 first half lead, were as far from Mahomes' magic as it gets. Mahomes was hit 7 times, sacked twice, hurried on what seemed like every snap, as Kansas City had a sizable statistical first half disadvantage in total yards, 179-23, rushing yards, 62-3, first downs, 13-1. They averaged 1.2 yards per play and had less yards than the Eagles had points. That inability to get into any kind of offensive flow. The Eagles led 34-0 before the Chiefs even crossed midfield, led to most of Mahomes' production coming well after the game had been decided, as the rabbi just noted. He finished 21 of 32 for 257 yards, 3 TDs, 2 picks, a lost fumble, and sacked 6 times, as Anthony noted, and hit 11. To add insult to injury, his pitch and catch partner, Travis Kelce, had 0 receptions for the first time in a postseason half. Now, sometimes numbers, which y'all know I'm big on, good or bad, don't tell the full story of a game. But in this instance, they do, and quite glaringly. Now, here are some of them and they are historically bad for a Super Bowl. Two words I never thought I'd associate with the Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes era Chiefs. 18. That's the number of points of the Eagles' margin of victory. It's the fifth largest in Super Bowl history. It's also the first Super Bowl to be won by multiple scores since Tampa Bay and Tom Brady beat Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City in Super Bowl 55. And overall, it's tied for the third largest margin of defeat by the Chiefs in any game started by Patrick Mahomes since 2018, and their biggest loss since Week 7 of 2021. 0. As Anthony noted, that's the number of blitz attempts by the Eagles defense. Now, per True Media, the Eagles recorded 6 sacks on 18 pressures with a 40.9 pressure rate en route to their Super Bowl win, but they did it without defensive coordinator Vic Fangio calling for a single blitz on any of those 42 times Mahomes dropped back to pass. At one point in the second half, the Eagles' pressure rate was as high as 52.4%, and they did it all with just a 4-man pass rush. Being able to generate their pass rush with just 4 allowed the Eagles to play 2 deep safety coverages at their highest rate of the season, 51%, and zone coverages overall at their highest rate of the season, 89.8. Only 2 of Mahomes' dropbacks happened with the Eagles playing man coverage, and resulted in Mahomes' second worst performance by EPA in any game in his career, minus 19.3, according to Next Gen Stats. 3, that's the number of Mahomes' turnovers, 2 interceptions and a fumble, most by the Chiefs in a playoff game since Mahomes became the starter in Kansas City's first game with 3 turnovers since Week 2 of 2024. 24, margin of points in Philadelphia's halftime lead. Second biggest in Super Bowl history. On the flip side, the Chiefs' 24-point first half deficit is also tied for the second biggest by the Chiefs in any game since Mahomes became the starter. 12, number of Chiefs first downs, tied for 10th fewest by a team in Super Bowl history, largely due to, as Anthony noted, their inability to convert on third downs. They finished 3 of 11 overall, 1 for 11 before their second to last touchdown drive, and they did not complete their one lone shot on fourth down. Now, as I said at the top, there was very little good, but what there was is worth mentioning. 35. That's Travis Kelce's career Super Bowl reception total. Even in this epic fail of a loss, the Chiefs tight end found a way to make history. With his 4 catches, he passed Jerry Rice for most career receptions in Super Bowl history. Granted, Kelce did it in 5, one more than Rice, who did it in just 4. 157. That's Xavier Worthy's receiving yards. The Chiefs rookie had a pretty historic performance. Those 157 are the 5th most in Super Bowl history. He broke Kansas City's previous franchise record of 133 receiving yards by Kelce, and the Chiefs lost to the Bucs in Super Bowl 55. The rest of KC's receiver room, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, and Juju Smith-Schuster combined for just 12 catches for 155 and 1 TD this entire postseason. With his Super Bowl numbers, Worthy eclipsed all of them on his own. 19 catches, 287 yards, 3 touchdowns in the entire postseason. He also became the second player in NFL history to have 150-plus receiving yards and multiple receiving TDs in a single Super Bowl, joining Washington's Ricky Sanders, who had 193 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns in Super Bowl 22. Guys, I'm not sure how the Chiefs rebound from such an epic beatdown, but something tells me they will, and the AFC's road to the Super Bowl will continue to go through Arrowhead.
We'll see. I think a lot of people who are Baltimore and Buffalo fans are either really happy that Kansas City got whipped, or
they are
they're just like, that could have been us who had the chance to do it. Because interesting enough, one thing you forgot to mention is Cooper DeJean had more yards in that interception return than the Chiefs had offense.
And how about this? That pick six, first ever of the Iowa rookie's career, and it comes in the Super Bowl on his birthday.
If I were to tell you that somebody was going to score a touchdown on their birthday and become the first person ever in the Super Bowl era to score on their birthday, you would think it would be Saquon Barkley, who turned 28 this weekend. It was Cooper DeJean. Okay, so back to the team that actually won the Lombardi Trophy, the team that will be parading down Philadelphia in the next version of the St. Valentine's. Yes, the next version of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre tomorrow in Philadelphia. That would be the Philadelphia Eagles and my mea culpa to Jalen Hurts. I'm so sorry. I thought that your team won in spite of you a lot of the time. Joe Tafaro, my podcast partner also thought that too, so blame him. But we have to say this. You did it correctly, because as we were mentioning, the fact that in all of his playoff wins until the NFC Championship, he threw for 160 yards or less in all of those wins. And you thought, hey, he's not the key to victory. Saquon Barkley is. Well, Saquon had 25 carries for 57 yards in the Super Bowl. But the threat of Saquon Barkley was just as important as Saquon himself. And that's where Jalen Hurts come in. By the way, note that the Jalen Hurts era, the Eagles are 46-20 with him as the starter, 6-3 in the playoffs.
Wow.
And now you have 2 Super Bowl champions appearances, 1 championship. In this run, Jalen Hurts committed 1 turnover, and that was that turnover early on in Super Bowl 59. 13 takeaways. That is a plus 12 turnover margin. That's the best for any team in a postseason since 2000.
Wow.
And just seeing what he did, and he reviewed that interception, and after that interception, by the way, he won 11 of his next 13 and had the 2 beautiful throws to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And he finally showed that, hey, if I have 2 all-pro wide receivers to throw to, you may have to worry about 3 weapons. And a lot of people did worry about 3 weapons, and the Chiefs didn't really sold out too much to Saquon Barkley, and they got hurt. So it was just a great run for him, and his legs. I picked the wrong horse to back on with the legs, because 11 rushes for 72 yards. That's the most ever quarterback rushing yards in a Super Bowl. He broke the record of Jalen Hurts 2 years ago when he went for 70 yards. So that's 142 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2 Super Bowls. When he plays the Chiefs, he sees dollar signs, apparently, because that's probably when some of his best games have been in. 17-22 on Sunday, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT. He was magnificent and probably threw some of the best throws that reminded you a lot of the person that finished second in the MVP voting in the 2022-23 season. And you could say that you could have voted for Hurts was a worthy Super Bowl MVP because you just couldn't write the words Eagles defense up on your ballot. So I'm sorry, Jalen, you were the star in here, and they won because of you and didn't win in spite of you. And it's kind of funny. Remember in Alabama during the one national championship he won, he was on the bench to end the game because they benched him for Tua Tagovailoa in the second half. He was on the bench again on the last offensive play on Sunday, except it wasn't because he was bad. It was because they were too good, and Kenny Pickett was the guy who was throwing the last play of the game. So
taking the knee.
Wasn't even taking the knee. Well, he took the knee afterwards, but he also missed on 4th down. But that comes all full circle for Jalen Hurts. He had a marvelous season, and I salute him. And good to end up with a Lombardi trophy for a guy who was much maligned most of this year.
Amen.
All right, we move on to NBA All-Star Weekend. And Anthony, go New York, go New York, go. That's what they tell me. The New York Knicks are having just another solid year. Man, remember when the old days when if you could get to 45 to 50 wins, that was a pipe dream for the Knicks? Well, now at 36-18, the New York Knicks, armed with 2 All-Star starters for the first time in half a century, 50 full years, that's in the form of Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, they're on that pace again. Despite the pretty good vibes, there are issues that we're going to talk about here. One of them, they're 0-5 against the league's big 3, the Cavs, the Celtics, and the Thunder. Mind you, the Cavs was early in the season, but still, that's where 5 of the 18 losses have come from. Good things, bad things for the inhabitants of MSG. Let's talk about it. Anthony, a positive in this first half that needs to continue for the New York Knickerbockers.
Well, that's a positive that I don't think none of us really saw coming. And because it's Tom Thibodeau as a head coach, the Knicks offense being the catalyst for their success, which is a shocker. If you know Tom Thibodeau's coaching history. But the Knicks are second best offensive rating in the NBA. They're only trailing Cleveland in that category at 119.8. And they're ahead of one of the teams that they haven't beaten all season, Boston, as well as another high-powered team, the Memphis Grizzlies. They're They have top 10 numbers in several statistical categories. Their third in field goal percentage, and third in free throw percentage at 80%. By the way, Mikal Bridges is the only starter on the Knicks that is shooting under 80% for the season. He's shooting at 79% from the charity strike this season. They're fourth in points per game at 117.9 per 100 possessions, fifth in net rating, uh, and fifth in points in the paint at 53.8, and 10th in the league in assists, while also committing the fourth fewest turnovers in the NBA. They're also fifth in three-point percentage, despite attempting the fourth fewest three-point attempts per game. And obviously with Karl-Anthony Towns at the stretch five, that creates a lot of open space, a lot of open lanes. We've seen OG Anunoby, we've seen Josh Hart in particular have plenty of room to cut and slash in the basket at will. And we saw just 24 hours ago against the Atlanta Hawks in that game. The Knicks couldn't try hard enough to give away at certain points in that game. But then you look at the two superstars. It starts with Jalen Brunson, who was averaging 26 points a game, averaging a career high in assists at 7.5 and one steal. And against the Rockets back on February 3rd, he scored 40 points. He had recorded his first 40-point, 10 assist game, scoring 42 points and 10 assists. He also recorded his 18th 40-plus scoring game in just a short time. Right? He's been in it for only 3 seasons, and he's joined the likes of Patrick Ewing and Carmelo Anthony for third most in team history. As far as Karl-Anthony Towns, he's averaging 24.7 points a game with a career high of 13.4 assists. And also, his ability to be a playmaker and passer has definitely opened up the offense a heck of a lot more. He's coming off back-to-back 40-point efforts against the Indiana Pacers on the road Tuesday night and against the Atlanta Hawks just 24 hours ago. All 5 Knicks starters are averaging double-digit points per game. OG Anunoby averaging 16.5 points a game. Mikal Bridges 17.5, and Josh Hart 14.7 points per game, respectively. And obviously, you don't worry about Miles McBride, who's close to 10 points a game. So it's almost 6 players that the Knicks have that can score in double figures. When the season started, you wondered how the offense that dynamic would open up with Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't think anyone expected the Knicks to be this good offensively, and there have been times where they kind of had to be this good on offense. And I don't know. I hope you won't mind. I set Jay up with this one.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, the Knicks has been really good offensively, but there's a caveat to all that. And I'll let you pick that one up. There's a reason why the Knicks had to basically outscore their opponents on certain nights, like we saw at MSG just 24 hours ago against the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Captain Obvious no-brainer negative that is in dire need of fixing if the Knicks are to get out of the East, and it's all about their defense or the lack thereof, especially as it relates to the gaping donut hole that is the center position that was so ably manned last season by Isaiah Hartenstein, who went to OKC in free agency, and Mitchell Robinson, who has spent more time patrolling hospital hallways than the painted area at MSG since his 2023-24 season ended in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semis due to a left ankle injury that required offseason surgery. It was his second procedure on his left ankle in a 6-month span. Robinson previously sustained a stress fracture in December of last season on that same left ankle. Now, the hope was that Robinson would be back in time for training camp in advance of this season, but he hasn't progressed as expected. And now the hope is that he'll be back by the end of the month. The Knicks' defensive numbers lie between the middle and the bottom of the association and are proof that New York is very much in dire need, I'm going to say that a lot, of the nimble, when healthy, 7-footer whose ability to protect the rim, play closer to the level of ball screens and pick and roll coverage, and own the glass takes the team's defense to a whole different level, taking the pressure off, as Anthony noted, the NBA's number 4 scoring offense at 118.4 points per game and second most efficient with a 121.1 rating. The Knicks are 13th in the NBA in scoring defense. They give up 112.5 points per game. They're 21st in defensive efficiency at 115. They are 24th in effective field goal percentage, 55%. They're 16th in turnover percentage, 12.7%. 25th in defensive rebounding per game. They are 17th in defensive rebounding percentage, 30th in blocks, 18th in opponents' points in the paint. They are giving up almost 50 points per game in the paint to their opponents. That defensive efficiency rating gets even worse when the Knicks face a top 10 offense, dropping to 25th at 122.6. No doubt one of the reasons why the Knicks are 6-7 against the association's top 10 offenses, such as potential Eastern Conference playoff foes. Cleveland, number 1, 122.5. Boston, number 4, 120.1. And Indiana, number 9, 115.7 in offensive efficiency. They're 2-3 against those teams. The two losses to Boston combined 50 points. And when you dive even deeper into the Knicks' defensive metrics, and I did, especially as it relates to situations that traditionally rise in the playoffs, such as half-court possessions, it gets even worse. New York ranks 24th overall in the NBA in half-court defensive rating, 99.4. But in those 13 games against those top 10 offenses, that rating drops to 108.4, 29th in the NBA. They had that same 108.4 half-court defensive rating against top 10 offenses last season, but they mitigated it with their elite-level rebounding, especially on the offensive end, where they were number 1 in the NBA in both offensive rebounds per game and offensive rebound percentage, something they aren't as good at this season, and Robinson's absence is a big reason why. That absence has laid bare just how bad Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, the Knicks' offensive alphas, are as defenders, especially as a tandem. Opponents hunt them incessantly when the pair are forced to defend pick and rolls and get switched onto mismatches. Not even the perimeter defensive brilliance of wings like OG Anunoby can compensate for the lack of any legitimate point of attack defense or rim protection. This forces the Knicks to overcompensate in their attempts to prevent forays into the paint, which results in easy kick-out threes. Now, against lesser offenses, the Knicks' length and size on the wing with Anunoby, Josh Hart, and Mikal Bridges can force opponents into taking tough mid-range shots. But the better offenses, who feature great spacing, ball and or player movement, are able to create better mid-range looks as well as those kick-out threes, and that's where the Knicks' defense gets exposed, as we saw in those aforementioned losses to Boston. History has not been kind to teams that defend as poorly in the half court as New York does, especially in the playoffs, which is previously noted as when pace of play slows. Per Cleaning the Glass, which has been tracking half-court efficiency since 2004, the only team to make the conference finals with a half-court defense that ranked in the bottom 5 against offenses ranked in the top 10 was the 2006-2007 Utah Jazz, whose half-court defense against top 10 offenses ranked 26th. They lost to San Antonio in 5 games. The Cleveland Cavs in 2015 and 2018 made the NBA Finals with a bottom 10 half-court defense against offenses ranked in the top 10, but those teams had LeBron James. Last I saw, the King was on the opposite coast. Thus, the Knicks' best chance to get their defense closer to the top 10 level it played at last season is to get Mitchell Robinson back on the court. His return is being advertised as the team's trade deadline acquisition, and back to doing what he does best, which is grabbing offensive rebounds, blocking shots, and defending the paint and rim. If the Knicks can keep him on the court once he does return, availability has never been Robinson's best ability, as he's only played in at least 60 games just once over his last 5 seasons, including this one. If he can, then they have a chance to fix this glaring negative that could spoil what has the potential to be a great season for the denizens of the world's most famous arena.
Ironically enough, the Knicks have only won 54 games 4 times since Pat Riley came into power in New York back in the early 90s. This may be one of those teams, but again, just considering that they're right now, as said, the best of the rest and not part of the best gives them something to aim for in the second half of the season. Yep. So if you have a good player on your team, you want somebody who plays a lot of minutes. You also maybe want another player that's in the top 20 in rebounds per game. You may also want a player who's in the top 10 in steals per game. And maybe someone who does pretty well and is your secondary assist man. What if I told you that all of these people are the same player? And the answer to that question is Josh Hart. And while Towns and Brunson are all-star starters and probably legitimate MVP candidates, Josh Hart is my MVP on this team. It's amazing that he was involved in a one-for-one deal with a guy with Cam Reddish, who right now is barely in a rotation for anybody in the league. Josh Hart's stats are just staggering to me entirely. As I said, he has 5.4 assists per game. That ranks 28th in the NBA. He gives you about a steal and a half per game. That's enough for top 10 in the NBA. And the most amazing stat of all, he has 9.6 rebounds per game. That is 17th in the NBA. The next guard who is in that list is Josh Giddey, who is 35th in the NBA. It's power forward, center, small forward. In fact, it's all power forwards and centers from number 1, Domantas Sabonis, to number 16, Bam Adebayo. The numbers of the rebounding for him is insane. He's also shooting 56% from the field and 64% true shooting. And again, he could probably play 49 minutes per game if he wanted to. That's because Josh Hart just plays all of the time when making sure he's healthy. He gets loose balls. He crashes like a madman. And oh yeah, it is 2 playoff appearances, by the way, 12.6 points, 9.6 rebounds per game. And again, the only player under 6'6" in the top 20 in the NBA's rebounding. And he's just done well lately, too. He had a 30, 10, and 5 points, rebounds, and assists against the Pacers. Never did that in his entire career until now. He scored 18 points in the game against the Hawks, 6 above his projection, 10 rebounds, 2 above projection, 6 assists, matches his output, 45 minutes per game, always shows his endurance. He has had multiple triple doubles this year, and he's just been insane. He is a guy. So here's an awesome stat for you. He has a chance to be the 4th guard in NBA history. As I said, he has at 9.5 right now, with 10 rebounds a game per season. The names on that list: Tom Gola. I don't think you all remember him. He played for the Philadelphia Warriors back in 1957 to 1960. Oscar Robertson and Russell Westbrook. After he played a game against the Kings, Doug Cressy, their new coach, who appeared in 35 games, compared his ability to read where the ball is going and grabbing offensive rebounds, 7 against Sacramento, to that of Hall of Famer Dennis Rodman. And there's nobody better in the NBA's history who was not a center like 6'9" and above, who was better at getting the ball than Rodman was. And he is just an insane player. And he's a favorite of everybody out there. Like I said, this Knicks team is one of the most fun teams I've ever been a fan of. I don't know where they're going to end up going, but the catalyst for all that fun seems to be Josh Hart. And we all love his snack choices too, Anthony.
Yeah, by the way, you gotta love the back and forth tweet between him and Jalen Brunson after the NFC Championship game. Jalen Brunson basically put out there that Josh Hart left the game early. So in a reply, Josh Hart said, "Yeah, I had to get some rest because one of us gotta play defense tomorrow night." So you gotta love the banter between these two, and the fact that Josh Hart potentially voted for Jalen Brunson to be a starter to quote ruin his weekend. If you watch this Knicks team, it's clear that they're a tight-knit group. They've had some fun. They've had a lot of fun with OG and Obi grabbing the mic for whatever reason during post-game pressers. This team, after the Celtics game, they do have a lot of question marks on the defensive side, and whether or not they're at the same level as the defending champs or even a very, very good Cleveland Cavaliers team in the Eastern Conference. But it's no question that this Knicks team definitely does have a lot of firepower, and what now year 3 kind of with some of this core
It's year,
team,
so it's funny.
two and
It's
a half
year
I would say.
So it's funny. It's kind of that way, but I think Towns kind of resets the clock a little bit, which is kind of weird. And just how what Towns has done for this team in
And
terms
Bridges
of
as
just
well.
being there, it's interesting, and we're going to see how it goes forward. We're going to have to move on from this, but we're
Mhm.
going to see how it moves forward because sometimes you don't know how much your window is or how long your window is, and I don't think we know that question right now with a lot of the NBA. Think we might know it for teams like the Thunder and the Celtics. But I think the jury is still out on can the Knicks be a top 2 to 3 team for years. And they are set up to be that way. But the question is that there's still a lot of questions about how far they can get it and if they can win a title.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's move on. I'm not 100% sure how to write out this Nets preview. I've tried a lot of ways, but here we go. Despite getting past their over-under in preseason to start in Vegas, it's actually only 18 wins. The 20-34 Brooklyn Nets. And Jay, who did they beat last night?
Shut up.
Okay. They could be considered to be exceeding expectations, but then you have a 7-game losing streak in there, a 5-game losing streak in there, 4 cases of 3-game losing streaks in there. It's good that they've seen Cam Thomas injured and Cam Johnson bloom. They saw Dennis Schroeder be much better than expected, but it's kind of bad that this team wants to tank and really start over, which Sean Marks has said is kind of a goal, even though they said it's not long. They're tied for 11th in the East, and I don't know if that's going to cut it as much. I'll talk about that more when I talk about my MVP. But Anthony, help me out. Give me a positive. Pretty, please.
Well, in spite of the fact that, well, I was going to joke or say that the only real positive in the Nets have is that the Barclays Center is a really nice venue, but there are some actual positives for the team that
There
calls the
are.
Barclays Center home. As a fact that as of late, their defense has been a lot better. Think about this: this month started with 2 wins over a very improved Houston Rockets team that's in 5th in the Western Conference right now. One was a pretty thorough beat manhandling that he did in Houston, and they basically stole the second game in one of the wildest finishes you're going to see all year long. To
Let
complete the
me
two
tell you,
games.
by the way, in that game, the game-winning field goal by D'Angelo Russell, 3 for 15 until that three-point shot. That is the quintessential D'Angelo Russell game.
Hey, I mean, his whole career he just struggled, but then he'll be Johnny on the spot before you know it. But the Nets defense has been kind of the catalyst. They're sick, including last night's game. Sorry, Jay, against the 76ers. They're 6-1 in the last 7 games going into the All-Star break. Has actually played their way back or fell forward, if you will, to the outside cusp of the playing tournament. Defensively, then they in this stretch they posted the NBA's best defensive rating for the month at 103.6. The opponent's field goal percentage is just 40%. They forced 15.5 turnovers per game in this stretch. This is 4th most in the NBA. And you think about the turnaround in January where they were struggling mightily. Um, this month they have in this stretch they've managed to hold all the opponents to under 100 points, which is so rare in today's NBA. Well, seemingly everyone can score 100 points just on accident alone. They held we just talked about the Knicks' high-powered offense. Even though they lost that game, they held the Knicks to 99 points. And the second half was really a half-court struggle where you saw Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns really have a hard time in that game. Nick Claxton, the starter, the guy who started the season on a minutes restriction, has been a big part of that. DeRay Sharp, the backup, has also been there. I mean, the Nets have something the Knicks don't have right now, and that is a shot blocking big who can protect the paint. The Nets have 2 of them. Claxton's been averaging 2 blocks a game in this stretch. And the fact that he has a total of 24 blocks in this current streak. Now here's the thing: they've had to do offensively. they've struggled mightily. Rabbi, you mentioned there's been a lot of changing parts in and out. But the one thing about Coach Fernandez, what he's done is this team has played hard. This team has competed night in and night out, even on nights where it's clearly a one-sided mismatch. And he has them on the right track. Now, I know there's some Net fans out there that are not happy with the current trade because the old saying of tanking for the best, for the most ping pongs that possibly get the number one draft pick. But right now, the Brooklyn Nets are building for the future, and they at least have one building block in their class and playing very well. After he had to start the season with a mental restriction coming off an ankle injury, and they gotta find out what else they can build around that. But right now, this current streak is probably the best streak of basketball that the Nets has played all season. And this is without Cam Thomas, who's been gone for a couple of months now with the with injury. And again, a locker room that has changed. That's a lot of faces
name
coming
tags,
out.
baby. Just bring out a name tag, every single person that can come in. I actually am very impressed with what Jordi Fernandez has done with this team. And it's interesting because he had that disastrous run in the Olympics with Team Canada, who was probably a possible favorite for gold, and they didn't even get anywhere close into the medal count, into the medals there. But he's done the most with very little and deserves to actually see this thing through for a little bit. Jay, when you're a 20 and 34 team, though, you have some negatives. Give me one.
You think?
Yep, go ahead.
I mean, look, the assignment was to find a negative needing to be fixed. This one can't be fixed. But not trading Cam Johnson at the trade deadline was a serious negative. Yeah, I know. The same could be said for the Nets not trading D'Angelo Russell, but the Nets can still unload him when the buyout market kicks in. And to be honest, Johnson, the soon-to-be 29-year-old wing, has arguably been Brooklyn's best player this season and was more likely to net Brooklyn the type of draft capital they need for their rebuild. How and why such playoff contending teams in need of perimeter shooting like the Pacers, the T-Wolves, the Thunder, Magic, the Kings, who elected to go the Zach LaVine route, the Cavs, who elected to go the DeAndre Hunter route, how they didn't all make every attempt to swing a trade for Johnson is a thing that makes me go, despite the fact that all of them could use a player such as Cam Johnson. The 6'8" Johnson is the 3-and-D prototype. He's a good athlete with great shooting touch, especially from beyond the arc, and the more detailed scout on him bears that out. Shoots it well from on the move, has an instinctive sense how to find open spots on the floor to create high-quality catch-and-shoot looks. He's also an above-average playmaker who can attack closeouts and run some pick-and-roll off handoffs. He's a versatile defender who fits into most schemes and can switch across the board. As a help defender, smart with his rotations and closeouts when he's guarding the weak side. He's a balanced on-ball defender who can effectively guard most wings, even when he has to be the primary defender for the opposing team's top perimeter scorer. He's averaging 19.1 points per game on 48.8% shooting overall from the floor and 41.3% shooting from three this season. He was up to 43.6 on 7.5 three-point attempts per game before suffering a right ankle sprain back on January 2, which kept him out for 7 games. Before the injury, he was leading the NBA with a 67% true shooting percentage among players who take at least 10 shots per game. He's rounding back into form, though despite his high shot volume, not quite yet 100%, though he now has the rest of the season in Brooklyn to get his groove back. He has playoff experience with Phoenix and is known to be a positive influence in the locker room. Most importantly, his contract is cap-friendly, averaging $21.5 million per year over the next 2 seasons, which is a really good value for a player of his caliber and fit. Just about any playoff contending team looking for a potential final piece to their rotation puzzle should have wanted him and gave the Nets their asking price. And yet, the trade deadline came and went without GM Sean Marks dealing him. Now, according to ESPN's Brian Windhurst, Johnson had many suitors, yet Brooklyn obviously didn't find a deal it liked enough, although according to sources, Brooklyn's asking price may have been a bit high. According to Jake Fisher, who writes for Mark Stein's newsletter, The Stein Line, the Nets' asking price was as many as 2 first-round picks packaged with a young player in exchange for Johnson. Now, 2 first rounders is considered the standard ask from teams who are considered to have the best role player available at the trade deadline. Invariably, that usually gets knocked down to being 1 first rounder, 1 second rounder, and maybe a good young player. But if the Nets dug their heels in and refused to budge on their asking price, it could explain why the teams I mentioned either wound up not making a deal with the Nets or going in a different direction. Now, most NBA folk figured the Nets would intentionally make this a lost season in hopes of landing a spot at the top of the lottery. And yet, Brooklyn has won 6 of their last 7, as Anthony noted, including back-to-back sweep of the Rockets to kick off February. Somehow, the Nets have won 11 games against teams 500 or better. That's 1 less than the third place Knicks have as of tonight. Not trading Cam Johnson while his trade value is at its peak is a head-scratcher to say the least, and it negatively impacts the Nets' shot at getting Cooper Flagg, the presumptive number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft.
Well, I think the bigger goal for this team is to try to at least get top 3 because you still have the 2 Rutgers guys, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper there. But overall, it just shows. Like I said, this team has a little too much talent, but again, not everybody can be the Wizards. By the way, they got Russell in a not everyone can be the Wizards. They got Russell in a Lakers trade, by the way, in mid-December. So it would have to be a double load off. And I don't know if the asking price for D'Angelo Russell is pretty high right now. Just ask LeBron. I don't think he's giving too many positive reviews of D'Angelo Russell. So when your team has multiple injuries like Cam Thomas, players who were performing under par, Cam Johnson, and just a lot of moving parts in what is kind of a lost season for the Nets, I have to give their GM Sean Marks MVP. That's right. I'm punting this one, kind of. Here's the thing. So they've made a lot of trades this season, and that's what you have to do in this situation when you're a team that has struck out with so many free agents over the past. The Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden era was a complete and utter failure. It didn't even get them to a conference final. So,
Jay, who called that failure?
You did.
Who called it, by the way?
A lot of people called that failure, but Anthony did call that the most over here. And it all started in the offseason and giving up Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks and got 5 draft picks out of it. A deal that still might seem as a head scratcher for a team that the Knicks probably got a little over the asking price of what the Nets wanted to win. Now, they're looking more like the team that also missed the play-in last season at 32-50, but they still need to do as much as they can. They have about a 9% chance right now to land in the top 4 in what they're doing, but they traded Dennis Schroeder to the Warriors back in December, who then promptly got traded again and again and again. And Dorian Finney-Smith also got traded to the Lakers. That's the main piece in the deal that brought D'Angelo Russell back, along with 3 second-round picks, by the way. Marks has openly said that this team is not prepared for a rebuild, but they're rebuilding, probably. Obviously, not getting rid of Cam Johnson was a little bit of a negative, but again, they're going to go higher in their asking price. They also got rid of Ben Simmons recently and cut bait, giving him a buyout in order to let him find a team with higher playoff aspirations, and he did that going to the LA Clippers, who've had a pretty damn good season themselves. There's teams that are needing enhancement. So yes, obviously the big thing is they have 4 first-round draft picks this year, by the way. So there might be some move. There might be some wheeling and dealing if they get something going on. And they need to just figure out, can they get Cooper Flagg from Duke? Can they get Ace Bailey? Can they get Dylan Harper? This is a pretty strong draft class. So we're going to see what happens. But here's the thing that's shocking. After the trades of Dennis Schroeder and Dorian Finney-Smith, where they got 5 seconds out of that deal, they now have a total of 31 draft picks in the next 7 years, 15 firsts and 16 seconds. And remember, this is a team that lost a ton of assets in the James Harden trade not too long ago. So gotta give credit for this team for at least building up a war chest that, as we saw with the Thunder, will eventually lead into disarming that war chest into making a run. We just don't know when it will be, because the Thunder took so many years. might take the Nets as long as well. But they continue on this route. Sean Marks is going to be the GM that does it.
Rabbi, I think he's got to get a little bit of a ding for not trading Cam Johnson, though.
I know, but again, you don't just get rid of players for the sake of getting rid of them. The tanking does have to happen, but again, not going to get down to the Wizards level. You're not going to get down to the Hornets level. So it's just a question on how far that ship can fall. And again, you do what they did with Mikal Bridges and wait till the offseason and see if you can find a better suitor. And they found a suitor that gave him a lot of stuff, which is probably, again, still a little bit more than I thought, but we'll see. All right. Last show, we talked about the Luka Doncic trade that said probably the league's third best player to the Los Angeles Lakers, and Dallas is totally forgotten about it since then. Yep, they're not pissed. And if you can believe that this has happened now, you are a complete liar. But because of the Super Bowl, just like the Kansas City Chiefs, we couldn't get through the whole game doing everything that we wanted to actually do. So now, since we have so much to talk about, the craziest deadline ever, let's go to round 2 of the trade recap. And Jay, it starts with the CEO and founder of Big Face Coffee as the long standoff, hostage negotiation, whatever you call it, between Jimmy Butler and the Heat is over, and Jimmy Buckets now has a new home in San Fran for the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, I guess, one of Mike Tomlin's favorite sayings is we want volunteers, not hostages. I guess Jimmy Butler thought he was being a volunteer, but Pat Riley saw him as a hostage. Hostage crisis over with Jimmy Butler going to the Warriors. Now, the fact that the Warriors traded forward Andrew Wiggins, a locker room favorite, and a protected first-round pick in order to acquire an offensive weapon at the trade deadline to take some of the scoring load off Steph Curry's shoulders was no surprise, even if they did so reluctantly, as they've been trying to fill the Klay Thompson-sized hole in their offense since they parted ways with Splash Brother number 2. The fact that Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat finally parted ways at the trade deadline after the relationship between Butler and Heat boss Pat Riley deteriorated so egregiously was also no surprise. The fact that both of those situations intersected was a surprise, especially since Butler, who really wanted to go to Phoenix by his skill set and personality, doesn't appear to fit what the Warriors do and who they are, either on the floor or in the locker room. At least on paper, and by certain narratives that have followed Butler wherever he's been. Let's start with the on-court stuff. The Warriors gave up Wiggins, their best perimeter defender, and a guy who shot 37.9% from 3 on 5.8 attempts per game while he was with Golden State, in exchange for a significantly worse three-point shooter in Butler, who averages 1.4 attempts per game from beyond the arc in Miami and knocked it down at 36.1%. Butler makes his living in the mid-range. Only 39 of his 135 jump shots are from 3, and 139 of his 304 field goal attempts are from 3 feet to 16 feet. And at the free throw line, where he averages 6.4 attempts per game and converts them at an 80% clip. The second aspect is the benefit of having a guy who can go get his own shot. 116 of those 304 field goal attempts are at the rim, and he converted them at a 72.4% clip, which adds a dynamic to a Warriors offense ranked 19th in points per game and 17th in efficiency that they did not previously have. Here's the thing, though. That same guy has spent most of his career being the alpha male in the offensive pecking order. Can Jimmy Buckets learn to be Robin to Curry's Batman and play within the confines of Steve Kerr's offense, which is built around the brilliance of arguably the greatest shooter in NBA history? Think about this. In 25 games with Miami this season, Butler averaged 17 points per game, 5.2 boards, 4.8 dimes on a 54, 36.1, 80.1 shooting slash line, averaging just 30.6 minutes per game. It's his lowest scoring average since his third season in the NBA back in 2013-14. However, even including a couple of games in which he was clearly goofing off as the level of trade drama increased, his player efficiency rating of 22.8 and his true shooting percentage of 63.8% would have made him number 1 on the Warriors in both categories. Defensively, he should fit in really well with Draymond Green, as the tough versatility the Warriors look for on that end of the floor is part of Butler's makeup. He should be able to step right into the role Wiggins occupied on the Warriors' defense and do it well. He and Green are both able to play on the ball or free safety, which adds a dimension to their help defense that's been missing since Andre Iguodala retired. What'll be interesting to see is if Kerr rolls out a small ball closing five with Curry, Jonathan Kuminga, and Green on the floor with Butler and either Buddy Hield, Moses Moody, or Brandon Podziemski. It's been kicked around, according to sources. How will the floor spacing work? Curry seems to think that no matter the unit he's on the floor with, Butler will fit in just fine, saying, quote, "It'll look different than what we're used to. He can play, I'm sure, a little bit of motion, but he's a shot creator, a finisher, somebody you have to take into account where he is on the floor. He plays at his own speed. He can get to the foul line, takes advantage of matchups. He's a competitor at the highest of high levels. I'm excited to see what it looks like. I'm going to watch a lot of Miami film to see some of the sets they like to run for him and what we can transition to our playbook." As for the off-court stuff, can Butler coexist with Green, who is the alpha of Golden State's locker room and who will never be defined by the words shy, quiet, or demure? Green was asked about this and said, quote, "He win, I win. That's the fit. Winners win. He's a winner. Perennial all-star. Tough as nails. Just effing get the job done however it needs to be done." And Kevin Looney, Golden State's respected elder statesman, also weighed in saying, quote, "I'm super confident. We've had a lot of different personalities, a lot of different guys. It usually works out. From the guys I've talked to, the guys who've played with him, Wiggs, meaning Wiggins, says he's a great guy from a player's perspective. I heard he's great. All the other stuff, the contract negotiations, you know how that goes. Team spins a narrative, media spins a narrative, player spins a narrative. I don't want to get into all of that. I know he's a winner. If he cares about winning, he can fit in easy here." Now, we know that Butler cares about winning greatly, as he has shown a knack for raising his game to a different level once the playoffs started. As much as he's tried to downplay it at times, playoff Jimmy is a thing. He has a Heat record 8 40-point postseason games in the postseason, including that 56-point masterpiece in Game 4 of Miami's 2023 first-round series against the Milwaukee Bucks. No other player in Heat history, not Dwayne Wade, not LeBron James, has scored at least 50 points in a playoff game. And that's the other reason you go get a guy like Butler. Marcus Thompson II, senior columnist Bay Area for The Athletic, said it best in a piece he wrote on the trade, writing, "Jimmy Butler and the Golden State Warriors, Chief Curry and Big Face Coffee. A match made in thirst. It's an unlikely pairing of mega entities that are too obstinate to accept a league trying to relegate them to yesteryear." God, I wish I could write like that. Bottom line, with Jimmy Butler, the Warriors have tied their immediate future to a player who has made a ridiculous mess at a couple of his previous stops, Minnesota and Miami specifically, and has done so in spectacular fashion. Think multi-car pileup on a California freeway or an Amtrak derailment along the I-95 corridor. Granted, those who are familiar with those previous situations are quick to point out, as Looney did, that Butler's issues were usually with management and related to his contract, which was settled when he declined the $52 million player option on his current deal for next season and agreed to the 2-year, $112 million extension Golden State offered him right after he joined the organization. On the whole, his teammates have generally gotten along with him just fine everywhere he's been. And the Warriors have welcomed him with open arms. And so far, he's produced, topping 20 points in each of the 3 games he's played, along with 6.7 boards, 5.7 assists per game, with 13, 15, and 6 free throw attempts over those games, providing that missing offensive dynamic I spoke of earlier. But that doesn't mean that this is a match made in basketball heaven. Only time will tell.
28 free throws in your first 2 games with the team has to be some sort of record that I have to look up. That's insane. They also won again tonight, by the way. So they were 3-1 on a 4-game road trip where they were playing Chicago, Milwaukee, Dallas, and this win against Houston. So good to be interesting. By the way, they're 10th right now in the West. Usually a winning record would get you like 4th or 5th in the East. In the West, it gets you 10 because
the West is stacked.
It is always a gauntlet out there. So, Anthony, when you have an 800 winning percentage, you don't think you would get trades that would get you richer, but the Cavs got DeAndre Hunter, and the rich are getting richer.
Oh yeah, this is the Cleveland Cavaliers are definitely all in with this move. I mean, and it's a good move for the Cavaliers. We think about you have 2 dynamic all-star caliber players and Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland commanded the backcourt. But DeAndre Hunter is averaging a career high 19 points again. This has he was backing up Zachary Rothschild in Atlanta before the price of the trade. Uh he's improved his 3-point shooting. So that makes him a very bona fide 3-and-D player. When you're thinking about plugging him in that lineup, when you have also you have Jared Allen and Mobley in the front court. The Cavs look at this as more of Hunter being able to be a better defender along the wing, a little more than what Karis LeVert was offering on that side of the basketball. But it's definitely something that the Cavs are gonna looking for a short term high reward situation. But there is one risk to this trade, and that is the fact that it's financially. When you think about now that they have Hunter on the books, the Cavs roster is getting a lot more expensive. When you think about Donovan Mitchell's extension, Jared Allen's extension, and Ben Sheets going to kick in, they're going to have to. I mean, they're all in for this season. Has the top team in the Eastern Conference. It makes a lot of sense. But now that you added his $23 million salary to the books, the Cavs are about $20 million north of the luxury tax, and they already have 10 players under contract, not including two key players in Ty Jerome and Sam Merrill, who is not part of that 10-man rotation. That also counts as the cap. So the Cavaliers for right now, this is a great trade in the fact that they're adding a guy who can give you 20 points on a given night and be a solid defender. Of course, they're just kicking the long-term ramifications of it down the line. But if it results in the Cavs lifting their first championship since 2016, and or at the very least going on their first deep postseason run since the LeBron James era came to an end after the 2018 season, it'd be awful. It would definitely be all worth it.
Not hard cap, though, ironically enough. They are not at the first or second apron, too, which is kind of shocking for a team, again, that has playing under an 800 winning percentage. Oklahoma City Thunder aren't that close to the apron either, and they're playing at an 800 winning percentage. Those two teams shocking everybody this year and how good that they've been playing, again, on a 65, 66 win level, which is something neither team has seen almost ever, except for LeBron James' era, of course, with Cleveland. So, okay, so the next trade that we're going to mention is an interesting move because it's not only for now, it's kind of for later. Because when you're a star like De'Aaron Fox, you're going to a worse team in San Antonio. Sacramento had a good team, but that marriage just really soured seemingly quicker than we thought. And then moving to a team like San Antonio, who's still got pieces, who are still learning, and it's a good move for most of the parties over here. Fox getting a new really lease on life and kind of being able to get his legacy going with Victor Wembanyama. Now the whole trade, we'll talk about that too to start off because there is also a bigger piece of the trade. So it says Zach LaVine to Sacramento, Kevin Huerter, Zach Collins, and Trey Jones in a bag of beans to Chicago, and spoiler alert, the bag of beans is possibly the most worthwhile thing that Chicago got back. So it's an interesting move. So let's talk about LaVine for a second. Currently, Sacramento is tied with Golden State and ninth place right now in the Western Conference. They would play each other right now. The season ended today in a play-in, just like they did last year. And if you're going to get rid of someone like De'Aaron Fox, the GM of the Kings said we wanted to stay competitive. Getting someone with Zach LaVine's quality, although he struggled only 5 for 26 and 3-point from 3-point range in his first 4 games. Get a pick package, get him to keep him in the thick of the Western Conference. Plus, they got 2 unprotected picks out of that. Now, as much as we love to see the weird reuniting of DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine on the same team. They just played 2 years ago in Chicago. What really is the big deal in this is De'Aaron Fox, who is a 27-year-old playing with a 21-year-old freak by the name of Victor Wembanyama, who will be in the All-Star game this upcoming weekend. In his first 4 games, Fox averaged 21.3 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 8.5 assists. That is 121 points per contest when Fox is on the court. That is a formidable duo that teams are not going to be able to contain. They might have a little few bumps this year. The Spurs are a distant 12th right now in the standings, so they wouldn't even be in the play-in. But you have a 1-2 punch for years to come. Plenty of young talent. Both are on the come up. And this is the first big move that shows that the Spurs know what they have with Victor Wembanyama. This was a team that was really in the hole just before they won the lottery to get Wembanyama. Now, they're still losing close games. Lost a close game in Atlanta last week as well. Lost a close game in Charlotte 2 days after that. Fox has speed and court vision. You're going to have a massive pick and roll once those two really get it together. And you're going to have opportunities from both sides of the floor. Fox helped the Kings make their first playoff experiences in nearly 2 decades of basketball there. And the biggest part of this thing also is the Spurs kept their nucleus together. Jeremy Sohan and his many colored hairstyles staying. Devin Vassell staying. Stephon Castle, possible Rookie of the Year contender, staying. No first-round picks that they owned from the Hawks from the DeJounte Murray trade back in the day. San Antonio has a bright future ahead, and De'Aaron Fox is now the Robin to the very, 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 very big Batman specter that Victor Wembanyama really shadows on the court. Now, as this is ready to finish up, with the NBA's finest heading to the Chase Center this weekend for the All-Star festivities, got a little bit of a final rant for everyone tonight. You can hate all you want. I want to see a competitive game. Someone always gets hurt. Nobody cares about this game. Where's the defense? Well, let me tell you this before we officially start. Sometimes for a period of 3 days to a week, all during the season, fans don't always want that. If you look at the 3 sports that usually have an all-star break, the NBA, MLB, and NHL, although this year the 4 Nations tournament is taking its place, Jay will talk about that in a moment, they play long seasons. You're playing October to April at least. You're playing October to April in at least the NHL and NBA, and you're playing April to September for the MLB, and if you want to actually be good, perhaps longer. So the only 2 options I see if you're going to fix anything is A, no events for the entire All-Star period, or B, no time off and no actual break. And even if a season is spread out a little bit more, do athletes really care if they have a little more time in between? You know the problems with people in the NBA having their load management. You, the fan, will be complaining, but we gave you extra time. Those 3 days are crucial. No, they're not. And sorry, Jay, unless you're Joel Embiid, and then I understand, barely understand. And if you want the no sports options, that's perfectly fine. But you know how many diehards really get annoyed when there's absolutely nothing for them to watch on the pro side? Do you know what happens in the 2 days after the All-Star break in the MLB? It's not pretty. Unless you want a break, and if you're one of us who are actually watching or on a sports show right now, I think you know the answer to that question. You don't actually want that break of little sports, no matter how much that break actually is. Sorry, not sorry. You want the action. Superstars having fun is okay. I have come here. Here is a man on a mission. A man who is here to convert the atheists of abolishing all-star games into the church of loving all things all-star. It's going to take a lot to convince you. It's okay. Remember the NBA at all-star games? Remember Jordan's last all-star game in 2003? Remember everyone with Ted Williams on the mound in 1999 at the MLB All-Star Game and everyone acting like a kid under the age of 30? Remember the Elam-ending All-Star NBA game that everyone enjoyed right before the pandemic screwed everything up? Those were fun. You're going to deny fun for people and bitch about people's fun? What right do we actually have to do about that? Last time I checked, we're not the parents of these athletes. Now, LeBron, have fun. Play nice, and no horsing around on the court. I want to make sure you're available for dinner later in the night. Play nice. Now, it's not for lack of trying by these sports. Baseball has put home field advantage on the line. Hashtag this time it counts. Hockey switched to a tournament-like 4-team format a few years ago, still do that now. And now basketball is starting with a 4-team drafted deal starting this year. Do we believe Shaq, Kenny, and Charles really drafted those teams? Come on. So here we go. Believe it or not, these commissioners are actually hearing you. And trust me, I don't want to hear Gary Bettman, Rob Manfred, or Adam Silver too much, so I don't blame you if you don't want to listen. Also, please note, the NFL Pro Bowl games not included in this. The Pro Bowl is useless. It's the end of a short season. No one has ever cared about it. So Pro Bowl people, stay in the corner. Do not come back. You're not part of this. Get out. ABC conversation. Decide to go your way out. Whatever it takes, enjoy it. The one time of the year where malcontented NBA players are happy. The one time that casual baseball fans say, hey, look, that Nationals player is really good. And if you hate the All-Star games, listen. There's a Dead Sea Scrolls list of more important things to actually give a flying frick about in the world of sports. So as I said last week, or as Jay said last week, I didn't say these exact words at the end of my rant, Jay did, but I'll do so here. Shut up and enjoy what you're watching. You won't witness history, but you'll witness happiness and fun. Go, guys.
And let me jump in here because I have
go right ahead.
Stuff in response to this, okay? And maybe maybe y'all are gonna say that I'm screaming at the kids to get off the lawn, but I don't care. I haven't liked the NBA All-Star game in years, mostly because the overall effort by the players has been lackluster, to say the least, for what seems like decades. The utter disregard for anything remotely resembling defense is appalling. And the constantly changing formats with regards to roster construction, rules, scoring, etc., reeks of desperation to try and make a farce that in no way remotely resembles basketball appear to be something that the late Dr. James Naismith might recognize. This year is no different as far as I'm concerned. If you have to go as far as they've gone in creating 4 teams to play in a mini tournament, then they've gone too far in the wrong direction. I miss the days of East versus West when conference pride was actually a thing. But if the NBA really wants to try and put a spark back in its annual midseason classic, I suggest they borrow from the NHL's playbook. Instead of the usual fare, which has become almost as meaningless as what the NBA subjects us to, the NHL replaced it with something that not only has its fans excited, but its players as well. The Four Nations Face-Off debuted this week, and while it doesn't have the history of the Olympics or the cachet and depth of field of a World Cup-style tournament, it will have Connor McDavid facing off against Austin Matthews and Alexander Barkov facing off against Elias Pettersson, and many other such matchups as the best NHL players from Canada, Finland, Sweden, and the United States go head-to-head in a round-robin format played by NHL rules but with a modified point system. The tournament will start with games in Montreal and then wrap up in Boston. Granted, it makes for a slightly longer than usual All-Star break. The tournament will span 8 days from February 12th, last night, through the 20th, including the championship. But the players don't seem to mind, as more than 80% of the 110 players asked in a poll conducted by The Athletic say they were very much interested in this tournament. McDavid said it best, telling reporters at the beginning of the month, quote, yes, it's not the Olympics. I understand that. It's not a World Cup of hockey, but there is still something on the line, and we want to represent our country well. When was the last time an NBA All-Star was that stoked about the midseason matchup? Now, back in 2023, NBA.com writer Sean Powell wrote a piece on something that he thought would breathe new life into what was already a stale, unappetizing piece of midseason fare. Take the 12 best American-born players and pit them against the 12 best non-American-born players. The U.S. versus the world All-Star game. It would showcase the NBA's best in a way that would reflect the game of basketball in terms of where it stood on the global stage and those who play it. Powell felt with this format, the players involved would truly hoop. The ball would move. Defense would actually get played. Shots would rain down from all over the floor, and the intensity would be, in his words, feisty, bordering on fierce. He felt that the players involved would be, again, in his words, wholly invested in the name of pride, in the name of love, in the name of bragging rights, and most definitely in the name of globalism. Think about who would be atop the rosters if that game was played this season. You'd only need first names and/or nicknames. LeBron, Steph, KD, Joker, Luca, Wemby. If what we saw this past summer in Paris in terms of the intensity of the games and the excitement from the fans is any indication, players like that going at it in an NBA All-Star game of the USA versus the world format might just be what the association needs to have this game actually matter again, not only in the eyes of the fans, but the players as well.
Well, here's the
Here
funny
endeth
thing.
my rant.
Now, let me counter your rant with this one thing. One of the things that I kind of related to is this is actually probably going to be a test because the way the teams are drafted, they basically call Charles' team global stars because it has Giannis, Jokic, Şengün, Siakam, Victor Wembanyama, and you have the OGs on another team, and you have younger stars on one team. So this is probably a
Not a fan.
bridge. I know you're not a fan. I know you're not a fan of change. But also, by the way,
This has nothing to do. No, don't paint me with that.
No, I'm not pegging you with that, but I'm just telling you.
Changes. This particular change, I am not a fan of.
Well, I feel like this could lead to more if this is successful. In fact, doing exactly what you said of USA versus the world. By the way, the NHL will return to the Olympics in 2026 and 2030. This was announced in consortium with it. I think the NHL All-Star Game will return back in 2027.
Maybe.
Because 26 will be the Olympic break. So, Anthony, take us home.
I would say this. I don't have a rant to oppose either one of you, but
Thank you.
But I will say this, Jay. I mean, you mentioned the Four Nations Challenge. Saturday night is USA versus Canada, and considering the political landscape we're in these times, what do you think the ratings are going to be for that game? So that's going to be very interesting. But yeah, I look at it like this: if you want, and I've been someone who's called out fans for kind of living in an era of nostalgia. Like they go to the 1 or 2 All-Star games in the NBA that was actually competitive for the final 5 minutes and say, see, they played defense back then. And I have to tell the kiddies, go back to any All-Star game. Nobody played defense. That's why that's why we always see scores of 140, 150 points on a regular. It's an All-Star game for a reason. So that's exhibition. It's for the fans. I get it, you want the fun. Me, I just like, hey, look, put some kind of effort into playing defense.
Thank
all right?
you.
That's the least you can. It's the very least as a fan I would call it. Madonna Toronto in the Western Conference almost scored 200 points. That was embarrassing.
Yes.
That was just completely embarrassing to say the least. If as a fan, that's something I just asked for. Like, show a little effort, show a little competitiveness at the end of the day. And yeah, it would be great to go back to the days of the Eastern Conference versus the Western Conference in the NBA, and there was bragging rights. Just say we were the better conference over the little brothers that were. Like in the 90s, obviously, the Eastern Conference was always a stronger conference when the Western Conference kind of the superior conference in the 80s and going back and back. The change now, and I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to mix it up a little bit because things got stale. But I think it's just more of the quality of the game more than just the format itself that has kind of suffered. The NFL listened to fans and media members cry way too much about how the Pro Bowl didn't matter and the players didn't take the thing seriously. Now, players took it seriously as far as the incentives, their money that was going to their bank accounts as a bonus for being a Pro Bowler. But the NFL is something that's a complete joke. It's a flag football. It's a skills competition.
They know it's a complete joke now. They know that.
Yeah, and it's made it even less watchable than the original Pro Bowl. This is why the Rabbi and I go to NFL Throwback on YouTube so we can watch the good old days of Pro Bowl yesteryear when we can see Sean Taylor take off a kick, knock the hell out of a kicker on a fake punt. And by the way, I still hate kickers. But
we know.
I look at it like this. The NHL, they did try this They've done this before. Remember the World versus North America? They had that for about 4 seasons in the All-Star game, where they took kind of the best players in North America against the world. So they played around with the All-Star format a number of occasions. And this is kind of a tune-up, if you will, to kind of reintroduce the NHL to the Olympic play. But overall, my rant is this. It's like, look, it's for the fans. I get it. As a fan, I want to see just a level of competence, some kind of level of quality, and trying to win the game or trying to be competitive from the players. And I get it. You don't want to get hurt and all that other stuff. I get that. But I don't want to wait for the final 5 minutes of a close game to see some actual defense. I want to see somewhat some defense being played. Look, I see it in street ball all the time, and it's just like, hey, they're not playing for money, and they're still at least putting some kind of effort into it. So for me as a fan, I just want to see the quality of competition kind of pick up a little bit. I don't really care for the formats all that much. I just want to see the players try a little harder to be a little more competitive in these games. Because at the end of the day, yeah, it's for the fans, and fans are going to find something to complain about regardless of the matter. But the one thing that
you two are doing right now, by the way, you're giving like literally the example of what you just said. So
yeah, but there's no excuse for literally just not giving a shit as far as just being it's just trying, it's just effort. Things like that gets you bitch or cut from a team in under normal circumstances. This is an all-star game, I get that, but it's like at least try to not give up 200 points in a given game. I love the whole Kobe rule that they had introduced in 2020, where you score a certain amount of points in the fourth quarter, but you wanted to keep the game close, and each time a team won a quarter, there was money going to a charity. So there was some kind of there was some setups there, and I was just like the NBA kind of going away from that. I think kind of stinks a little bit. Well, I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to change up. They're trying to keep something fresh. But the best thing they could do is with the players themselves. Just compete a little harder at the end of the day.
Yeah, because honestly, Anthony, I agree with you. I'll put this as simply as I can. If I want to see a Shakespearean comedy of errors played out on a basketball court, I'll go watch the Harlem Globetrotters. Okay. That at least is entertaining, but it's not meant to be misconstrued as actual basketball.
And by the way, Globetrotters in town next week. But just put that out there.
Oh. By the way, I'd like to see defense played anywhere else. I just looked at the stat, which is insane. The team in 20 years ago, the worst defense in the league in points per game were the Phoenix Suns with 104 points. This year, the best defense in the league is the Thunders, who allow 104.7 points per game. So I just like to see defense anywhere. Really, there seems to be a limit.
But not 1990s era Miami, New York Knicks defense.
This is still 2000. Not that, but like back to 10 years ago at least. I have to go 20 years ago, but anyway. For my two All-Stars with me, Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I am Steven Rabinowitz, the LaMelo Ball of the show. Fans like me, but then when the coaches actually who know stuff overrule and wisely say, nah, not an All-Star, smart men. YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLens is where you can see us on demand. Subscribe. Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLens is where you can see us live. Like and subscribe. And Jay?
Our Twitter handle is @ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show, like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I've posted a link to a story by Grant Brisbee of The Athletic for all of the football drunk barbarians, Brisbee's words, not mine, out there who can also consider themselves baseball fans. It will get you caught up on some of the bigger stories that happened with our national pastime while you were hiding under your NFL rock all winter long. It's a cleverly written piece that is very much worth the read.
Should we say a in memoriam for Devin Williams' beard this week, by the way? Jesus Christ.
Like anybody coming to the Yankees.
I hate the shaving rule, but that's for another time. Taking a week off. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night.
Good night, everyone.